Welcome to Ghost Stories of the Battles, where history intertwines with the supernatural to reveal secrets long buried beneath the weight of time. Today, we venture into the haunting echoes of Plötzensee Prison in Berlin, Germany, a site entrenched in dark history and unresolved spirits. As the shadows of the past loom large, we invite you to discover the chilling legacy of this infamous prison, where countless souls met their tragic ends. Did the spirits of the executed find peace, or do they remain tethered to this earthly realm, seeking to tell their stories? Plotzensee Prison, once a grim symbol of Nazi-era repression, was a place of incarceration and execution for political prisoners. Here, innocent lives were extinguished during one of history's darkest chapters, leaving behind a haunting testament to humanity's struggle against tyranny and oppression. Its walls contain echoes of resistance, fear, and betrayal, a collection of souls intertwined with the broader conflicts of World War II. Picture the prison cold. Gray stone walls entwined with creeping vines, their starkness further accentuated at dusk as shadows spiral and play tricks on the eye. A heavy atmosphere settles upon the grounds, thick with whispers of those who suffered within. As we step closer to the heart of Plötzensee, we will uncover the lingering phenomena that haunt these stone corridors, the chilling cries of the past, the sudden cold drafts that embrace the living, and shadows that glide silently through the remnants of despair. Welcome to a journey steeped in history and ghostly encounters. Story funds. Whispers in the walls. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and the ghosts of forgotten whispers as stood at the entrance of Plotzensee Prison. She was a local historian, her heart perpetually intertwined with the stories of those who had once been trapped within these grim walls. It was late autumn, and the chill had set in, a mist rolling through the cracked stone pathways that wound through the prison grounds, swirling like the spirits that were rumored to linger here. As she traced her fingers over the cold stone, Greta felt an electric pulse, a connection to the lives lost within. She recalled the tales of despair and defiance told to her by the elders in her town, stories of resistors and innocents caught in the ruthless grip of history. Together, those narratives formed a tapestry of human experience, bravery shrouded in fear, hope wrapped in despair. As dusk settled, shadows grew long, stretching menacingly along the prison walls, merging with the mist to create an otherworldly aura. It was then that the stories she sought began to emerge from the gloom, beckoning her into a deeper understanding of her painful yet proud past. On this ominous night, Greta chose to immerse herself in the archives housed within the prison's former administration building. Surrounded by the artifacts and remnants of a time best left forgotten, she lit a lantern, the flickering glow lending warmth to the otherwise somber atmosphere. The dust motes danced like restless spirits in the beam of light, and as she settled down in front of a collection of yellowing documents, she felt the weight of history settle around her. It wasn't long before the whispers began, soft and indistinct at first, like the rustling of leaves in a distant forest. But soon they swelled, becoming more articulate, voices that seemed to echo off the very walls that contained them. Greta listened intently, her heart racing as phrases emerged from the cacophony. She heard the name Emil entwined amongst the static, imbued with regret and longing, a voice pleading for remembrance. Emil was more than just a name. He was the embodiment of resistance during one of Europe's darkest hours. Hailed as a hero among those who fought against tyranny, he had captured the spirit of hope when all seemed lost. The more Greta delved into his life, the more she felt an inexplicable connection to him, as though she was peeling back layers of time and encountering pieces of his shattered soul. Days turned into weeks as she painstakingly transcribed Emil's letters, muttering the lines under her breath in the dim light of her workspace. Each expanse of ink revealed a fragmented world, a vision of a passionate young man driven to take a stand against oppression. If we do not fight for our freedom, what will happen to those we love? Emil wrote, his urgency evident in the rising ink blots as he pressed harder against the paper. In the stillness of the night, Greta began to experience strange occurrences. The temperature in the room would plummet suddenly, her breath hitching in the frosty air. Objects on her desk would shift slightly when she returned to them, and she'd catch a glimpse of movement in the corner of her eye. Shadows fleeting like smoke dissipating in the wind. Each encounter spurred her curiosity. She was both fascinated and unnerved as the prison spoke to her in ways she had never anticipated. The whispers soon grew more pronounced, tracing the outline of Emil's last moments, the final cries of a man who knew his end was near, yet held on to the hope for a better tomorrow. "Remember me," they implored, a chorus of the lost echoing through her mind. The historical inaccuracies in her mind merged with the ethereal reality of this tortured space. Greta knew that Emil's execution had been a pivotal moment in a broader narrative of resistance, a symbol of love and longing snuffed out by the cruel hand of fate. She felt compelled to share his story, contextualizing it with the sacrifices of the individuals who had been part of movements like the White Rose, a group that faced the deadly consequences of standing up for their beliefs. One night, as a veil of fog cloaked the prison in darkness, she sat transcribing a particularly heart-wrenching letter when she felt a chill like cold iron grip her heart. The whispers crescendoed into a heart-wrenching plea. The air shimmered, and for a fleeting moment, she felt the presence of Emil beside her, strong yet sorrowful. His form was replete with a luminous glow, a contrasting juxtaposition against the somber grays of the prison. "I will never be free unless my story is told," his voice resonated, enveloping Greta as if clinging to her soul. Overflowing with emotion, she realized she had not only uncovered history, but had formed a bond that transcended time. She was both custodian of the past and the voice of the forgotten, entrusted to carry Emil's legacy forward. With the palpable weight of history pressing upon her, Greta rose, determination igniting a fire within her. She gathered her research, knowing that it was vital to create a memorial for those who, like Emil, had given everything in the name of freedom. The next day, with the sun casting long shadows over the stone walls, Greta found herself standing at the threshold of the prison, her heart heavy yet resolute. The echoes of Emil's whispers urged her on, a reminder that history must be cherished and preserved. She envisioned a future where the sacrifices made would not be forgotten, where the stories of resistance and resilience would resonate within the halls of the living. As she shared Emil's story with the world, she understood the importance of remembrance, not just for those who had met their fate within these walls, but for the living who wandered outside, forever marked by their entangled legacy. The past, no longer a burden, became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even from the depths of despair, people could rise, united against the shadows of their history. Persuaded by the bond she'd forged with Emil, Greta left Plötzensee with the resolve to advocate for those trapped between the pages of history and memory. As she glanced back at the prison, the lingering whispers faded into a tranquil silence. But she knew in her heart that the spirits of the executed, including Emil, were never truly gone. They were woven into the fabric of the present, urging humanity to carry their stories forward, forever alive in hearts that remembered. As the camera pulls back from Greta's haunted gaze, she stands in the embrace of fading sunlight, her voice echoing. But Emil isn't the only one. A pause, the weight of what lies ahead palpable. Next, we hear of a guard who never truly left. Story 2. The Phantom Guard. The night was thick with an unsettling silence enveloping Plotzensee Prison, the air pregnant with stories that begged to be told. Max, a former guard, stood at the entrance, a man still haunted by an invisible weight. He clutched a small keychain, the only remnant of his days in this grim establishment, its metal gleaming dully under the moonlight. The air was chilling, a stark contrast to the memories that flooded back each time he set foot near those walls. After years of avoiding the place, something compelled him to return. As he stepped through the rusting gates, shadows flitted at the edges of his vision, playing tricks on his mind. The daunting, cold stone walls rose before him like the stark reminders of duty and remorse, consumed by a silence that seemed almost alive. The moon illuminated fragments of the prison broken windows, dilapidated guard towers, and the crumbling gallows, their morbid history whispering through the air like a forgotten lullaby of sorrow. Max recalled the dreadful nights spent pacing these halls, weaving through memories of men and women whose cries of despair echoed behind the very walls he now faced. He had sworn an oath to uphold order, yet the burdens of a guard's duty had left indelible marks on his consciousness. And amid it all, a darker specter shadowed him, a figure resembling the executioner who haunted his nightmares since the day he took the job, always lurking near the gallows, beckoning him deeper into regrets that refused to die. The first time Max encountered the phantom was on a particularly cold night. He had only just finished his rounds, taking in the eerie tranquility of the prison grounds when he felt a prickling at the back of his neck. Turning, he saw it an outline, pallid and indistinct, emerging from the shadows beside the gallows. It looked like a guard, but the form held an otherworldly quality. A shiver ran down his spine. The following nights brought similar experiences. Each time he turned a corner, there was a flicker of movement. The figure seemed to beckon him toward the execution chamber, a sinister call that resonated through the silence. Max's heart raced as he dashed past the gallows. Yet somehow, the ghost drew closer with each fleeting glance. It felt like being pursued by a past he could not escape. "What do you want from me?" he whispered into the gloom during one long, sleepless night. There was no reply but the soft rustling of leaves outside and the distant drip of water echoing in the halls. Days turned into weeks, and the shadow began to take shape, losing some of its sinister quality. Max started to perceive the figure as not merely a specter of death, but as a soul bound to this hellish realm by remorse and guilt. The ghost would approach him, its voice barely a whisper, uttering words that seemed to claw at the very fabric of his conscience. "Remember us," the figure urged one night, the sound quietly reverberating as if emanating from the walls themselves. "Remember the lives lost, the innocents betrayed for nothing." As the weeks dragged on, that feeling of being watched grew stronger. Max couldn't shake the reminders of the prisoners he had overseen. Faces filled with hope, despair, and resignation would swoop through his mind during the darkest hours. He could still hear the echoes of their final moments, chilling his blood. Men sentenced to die, often on flimsy charges, often for simply resisting a regime that thrived on fear. Max recalled one prisoner in particular, a young man named Felix, who had attempted to rally fellow inmates against their captors. Felix, with dreams of freedom and a cause worth fighting for, had been silenced on the very gallows that still loomed ominously before him. The echoes of Felix's courage felt alive within those walls, and guilt gnawed at Max's insides like a ravenous dog. On one haunting evening, just as the moon hung high and full in the sky, Max found himself drawn to the execution chamber. The chill seeping through the stone floor ran deeper than the air outside, but he pressed on, compelled by a force he couldn't understand. In the room where he'd witnessed too much death and torment, he saw the figure again, the ghastly visage of the executioner, but this time, it was holding something, a tattered uniform, identical to the one Max wore in those days. "Look," it hushed, voice like the rustle of old paper. "Look at the stain upon your hands." Max took a step back, his breath hitching. "I was just following orders. I never wanted to," the apparition cut him off, shaking its head. "But you did. You watched as they cried out for mercy. Every life you turned away. Was it worth it?" A tear streamed down Max's face, each drop a release of memories he had long buried. He suddenly felt the weight of Felix's dreams crashing against him, pleading with him to acknowledge their fate. The sacrifices made, the choices leading to grief, they washed over him in waves of realization. The room darkened further, shadows stretching ominously as though pulling Max ever deeper into despair. "You cannot undo the past," the figure turned, revealing sunken eyes brimming with sorrow. "But you must tell their stories. Each name forgotten, each life extinguished, bring them back to be remembered." Understanding dawned on Max like the first light of dawn, piercing through outstretched branches. He had hid behind the badge, believing it protected him from the guilt of complicity. Now, he could feel the spirits around him, their weight, settling not only on his shoulders, but in the very fabric of the prison. Returning to the guardhouse, Max didn't sleep. Instead, he poured every ounce of remorse and recollection he could muster into writing. Fragmented scenes of lives extinguished by blind fidelity and a demanding regime filled pages in the depths of the dark hours. As he wrote, the air felt charged, electric, almost as if the spirits were lending him their strength. "Remember us," they seemed to say, and he finally understood. With each name and story penned down, a cathartic release washed over him. Max knew he couldn't change the past, but perhaps he could create a future where their voices would echo once again. No longer mere whispers lost among the walls of Plötzensee. As dawn's first light crept through the cracks of the guardhouse windows, Max felt lighter, like a burden had been rolled away. He had resigned from his position, leaving the keys behind, knowing full well that he could never erase the memory of those tormented souls. Standing once more at the gates of Plötzensee, he gazed upon the stones that had held so much anguish. No longer would he view it solely as a prison, now it was a grave of resilience. The spirits he encountered had not demanded absolution, they sought remembrance, and in sharing their stories, Max felt their presence rekindle. In the years that followed, as Max took to speaking publicly about his experiences, he began to witness a transformation and awakening of the public about the silent suffering within the prison's walls. The stories he shared resonated with people, stirring emotions long buried beneath the weight of history. No longer were the souls merely victims of circumstance, they became symbols of resistance. Their narratives woven back into the fabric of Germany's identity, the fight against a past marred by darkness. Each speech became a tribute to those whose lives had been lost. Each tear shed a reminder of their indomitable spirit. Knowing that the young men and women who had once filled the chambers with hope were being honored brought him solace. The phantom that had haunted him transformed from an embodiment of guilt into one of connection and unbroken thread of shared humanity. As he spoke, the shadows of the prison seemed to fade, replaced by the flicker of candlelight and the warmth of remembrance. Max knew he had finally found his peace, a reconciliation with the past that transcended mere acceptance. The spirits may not seek justice, he often concluded, but they seek acknowledgement, to have their tales told so the world remembers they were here. He paused often, allowing the silence to settle heavily, a reminder of the lives intertwined with his own. Max had learned that sometimes it is not the ghosts of the past that haunt us, but rather the choices we make in the present. As the narration of Max's poignant journey comes to a close, the atmosphere around Plotzensee Prison remains thick with the weight of history, still echoing with a multitude of souls, each demanding to be recognized and remembered. The moonlight casts a surreal glow upon the whispering shadows of the prison walls, suggesting stories waiting to be unearthed, relationships transcending beyond death. But the prison holds darker secrets still. What if not all the souls are here seeking to share their tales? Prepare for a tale that intertwines love and loss, a story reaching across generations where a young woman returns to confront a haunting of her own. Her heart collides with the past, weaving through the spectral threads binding her to this historical tome. Join us next as we delve into Love Beyond the Grave, a story that beckons us to explore the depths of memory and longing amidst the shadows of Plötzensee. Story 3. Love Beyond the Grave. Lara stepped up to the haunting edifice of Plotzensee Prison, a place echoing with the whispers of history, her heart burdened by an emotional weight she could barely understand. She was here with a purpose, not merely a historical expedition, but a quest deeply personal. Her great-grandfather, once imprisoned in this very place, had left behind not just memories of hardship, but a story of forbidden love entwined with the very stones that surrounded her. As she arrived at the prison, the sky was overcast, gray clouds hanging heavy, as if mirroring the sorrow of past tragedies. She gently stroked the locket in her hand, an heirloom passed down through generations, its intricate design catching glimmers of the dying sunlight. Inside lay a photograph of her great-grandfather and his lost love, a face trapped in time, eyes full of yearning remnants of passion extinguished by circumstance. Walking through the rusted gates, Lara felt an unshakable connection to the past, a pulsating energy weaving through the damp, cold air, a call from the echoes of bygone days. The air shifted around her, almost as if the prison breathed in the grief of the forgotten. Each step she took reverberated with her grandfather's sorrow, and she was enveloped in a sense of duty and obligation to share their love story that had survived the sinister shadows of this place. The heavy wooden doors creaked as if they too mourned the loss of countless souls who had passed beyond them. Lara made her way down the dimly lit corridors, a shiver running up her spine. Faded numbers and names etched into the walls were remnants of the prisoners who once faced their fates here. Her fingers grazed the cold stone, feeling the history seep through her skin. It wasn't long before Lara stumbled upon a dusty archive room, portions of history preserved in faded letters bundled with care. As she rifled through the old papers, her heart raced as a letter fell open, revealing the delicate script of her grandfather. Each loop of the pen felt like a heartbeat pulsing through time. "Dearest Clara," it began, his words shimmering with longing. As she read, Lara was pulled into the narrative of a young man, beset by turmoil yet held buoyant by love. Her grandfather spoke of clandestine meetings in the shadows of the prison, where hope flickered like a candle in the dark. "I think of you under the stars while my world crumbles," one letter mused, carrying the weight of his despair, as she envisioned their secret rendezvous as a hidden garden. Lush and vibrant, where laughter rang out, echoing through the emptiness of their surroundings. But those beautiful moments were stained with the inevitability of fate, their joy always intertwined with the specter of separation. As she absorbed each word, the air thick with emotion, transforming her surroundings. Shadows danced under the flickering light, and the temperature dropped. Lara shivered but didn't turn back. She was compelled deeper into the past. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the room, and Lara felt a presence brushing against her, as if a hand reached out to comfort her. Heart pounding. She looked around. There was nothing but emptiness. Yet, within the stillness, she recognized a tender warmth, an assurance woven into the fabric of her ancestral love. With each letter that unfolded before her, the ethereal vision of her grandfather and Clara began to manifest. Faint whispers fluttered around her like the rustling of pages, urging her to listen. "Promise you won't forget me, my darling," a voice echoed softly in her mind, and the air shimmered with the essence of their unbroken bond. A transcendent scene unfolded, revealing the couple meeting in secret corners of the prison grounds, a yearning gaze, a stolen kiss, all shrouded in opulent twilight, reflecting what had been lost. But reality quickly interceded with a startling jolt. She realized that their love had been stifled by the world outside: war, betrayal, and the malignant grip of totalitarianism. Lara's eyes prickled with tears as she gathered more letters, each revealing pieces of her grandparents' story, revealing not just the despair, but the unyielding love that had flickered even in darkness. A letter slips from her grasp and flutters to the floor. As she bends to retrieve it, a spectral shimmer graces her peripheral vision. Glancing up, she gasped as translucent figures emerged: her grandfather, a young man burdened by sorrow, and beside him a fleeting form of Clara, her face radiating love and longing masked by a veil of sadness. "Please," her grandfather's spirit implored, eyes pleading, "remember her name. Keep our love alive." The words stirred something within Lara, igniting a fire in her soul. The surroundings melted away into a ghostly tableau, the memories swirling around her, ladder ringing through the walls. Clara's gentle voice promising to wait. The love letters exchanged under hushed whispers of hope amidst despair. Lara stepped closer, heart racing as she felt connected to something timeless, a love so profound. It reached beyond mortality. Now, not just an observer, Lara became an integral part of their story. She found herself wandering the grounds where her grandfather once walked, feeling each monumental moment replay in her heart. Beneath an ancient tree, a witness to their stolen moments, she knelt down, closing her eyes, envisioning the patch of earth alive with their shared laughter, their dreams innocently bursting into bloom despite the shadows that loomed above. As the boundaries between life and afterlife blurred, Clara's spirit reached for her, bringing with it the warmth of forgotten love. Together they shared their pain, and Lara felt not just the weight of the loss, but also the indomitable spirit of love that could transcend even the most suffocating confines. Amidst the ghostly manifestations of joy and sorrow, Lara began to craft a memorial her heart, not just for Clara and her grandfather, but for all the lost souls caught in the clutch of despair within those prison walls. With every letter read, Lara felt the sense of closure deepen. Clara's spirit whispered to her softly, "Let your heart remember what this place has tried to erase." It resonated within her as she started to weave together a narrative of love and loss, hoping to bring justice to the forgotten fates that had graced Plötzensee. The moment Clara smiled a fleeting expression of relief, Lara understood. Her great-grandfather's love had never truly faded. It lingered, waiting for recognition. She resolved to honor it not just for them, but for all those whose stories mingled in the dust of the prison's past. As the final words of her grandfather's letters inflected dreamlike whispers, Lara knew she must bridge the past with the present. The warmth of the locket pressed against her heart, igniting a resolve. The time had come to create a memorial that would encompass their story of love against all odds. Standing beneath the ancient tree, where shadows danced at dusk, she began to envision a space dedicated to honoring those lost in the confines of Plötzensee. A garden filled with flowers that thrive in darkness, a place for the living and the spectral to honor the love so deeply entwined in the prison's stone heart. With each brick she placed mentally, she could almost glimpse her grandfather and Clara walking, hands entwined, finally free from the clutches of fear. Lara felt their spirits rejoicing, and she whispered a promise to her ancestors, vowing to keep the memory of their love alive for generations to come. As she stepped back from her thoughts, the remnants of love filled the cold air around her, warming her soul. Grateful tears filled her eyes as a serene calm enveloped her, crafting an intimate moment with the past, suspended between bitter loss and the glorious reprise of love. Love, as Lara discovered, did not simply remain a fleeting dream buried in the prison's dark history. It beckoned, insisting on being remembered with reverence, ensuring that their stories transcended time. With a heart full of hope and a newfound mission to honor the past, Lara felt empowered as she turned away from the echoes of the love that had endured through heartbreak. But the prison held darker secrets, remnants entwined with betrayal and sorrow. As the screen fades, a chilling echo resonates from the stone walls. Whispers of lives spiraled into despair, evidence of trust shattered by greed. Next, prepare to face the tale steeped in audacious betrayal and anguish that transcends time. For here at Plötzensee, not all spirits find peace, and not all stories end in love. Story 4: Echoes of Betrayal. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the bleak grounds of Plotzensee Prison, I, Jonas, a journalist, stood at the prison gates, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and dread. I was here on a mission, tasked with investigating the chilling history of this infamous institution for a documentary focused on its darker chapters. A heavy mist began to roll in, wrapping the prison in an unsettling shroud that seemed to absorb the last beams of daylight, enhancing the sense of dread that clung to the very stones of the prison. The weathered walls stood like sentinels, bearing witness to the countless injustices within. I knew the stories of those condemned here, those forsaken by society. But today, I was particularly drawn to tales of betrayal. That nagging whisper of someone breaking the sacred bond of trust among comrades amid the terror of war. It was said that in Plötzensee, betrayal echoed louder than any scream. I couldn't shake the feeling that the air still held the weight of their anguish and sorrow. Gripping my microphone tightly, I stepped forward, determined to peel back the layers of history that haunted this place. Each step felt like kindling a fire long buried, the ashes of shattered trust fluttering, like forgotten memories about to be resurrected. What would I discover lurking in the forgotten records? What secrets still lay beneath the surface, waiting to whisper their truths to anyone brave enough to listen? The oppressive atmosphere enveloped me as I entered the prison's archives, an expansive room overflowing with files and documents from decades of misery. The air was stale, tinged with the scent of damp paper and faded ink, a testament to the countless stories waiting to be uncovered. I powered on my recorder, the software a comfort against the eerie silence. I combed through the files, my fingers trembling as they brushed against the pages. It was more than a history lesson. It was an encounter with lost souls. My investigation unearthed chilling testimonies of prisoners betrayed by their closest allies, the ones they might have counted on in their last moments. Among them was the harrowing story of Anton, a man who had fostered hope amidst despair, only to find it dashed by a fellow inmate named Klaus. The two had formed a fragile bond for survival, sharing food, information, and whispers of defiance against the regime. Yet, hope is a fragile thing, and in the bleak corridors of Plötzensee, it proved to be a deadly game. Frantically flipping through Anton's file, I found letters written in a shaky script, filled with dreams of freedom and sorrowful pleas for understanding. They revealed a man desperate to trust Klaus, desperately believing they were allies in the face of evil. But their bond was sealed with treachery. Klaus, driven by terror and a desire for self-preservation, betrayed Anton to the guards, a perilous choice that led to Anton's execution, a death shrouded by the very trust he had granted his supposed friend. The ink on the page seemed to bleed sorrow and regret, as if the ghosts of the past beckoned me to glimpse their turmoil. Every word I read pulsated with a life of its own, the room growing colder as shadows played tricks upon my eyes. I found myself wrapped in the echoes of betrayal. Visions flickered Anton wandering the corridors, a lingering specter echoing his final cries for justice, pleading for his story to be told. My heart raced, the weight of his anguish pressing heavily against my chest. Days passed, and the deeper I dug into Anton's narrative, the more my surroundings transformed. The mist outside thickened, and I began to feel an otherworldly presence, whispers flooding my mind. They were soft at first, like rustling leaves or forgotten hymns, but soon their intensity grew, resonating within the very stones of the prison. On the third night of my investigation, armed with a camera and dim flashlight, I wandered into the execution chamber, an ominous space heavy with the residue of despair. I could almost hear the creaking of the gallows. I could almost see the haunting shadows of those done wrong. As I recorded the atmosphere, it occurred I felt a chill grip my spine, a breath of cold air that carried with it a whisper betrayal. I spun around, my breath hitching in my throat. The shadows seemed to gather closer, and through the gloom, what appeared to be a figure shifted, a silhouette adorned in tattered, clothed clothing that faded in and out, revealing nothing more than a grotesque memory of despair. "Who are you?" I called out, voice trembling. But only silence met my query, the air around me taut with an indescribable sorrow. Days turned into a blur as I became consumed by the spirits of the betrayed. It felt as if Anton's spirit was guiding me through a labyrinth of memories. Night after night, I spoke to him, acknowledging the wrong he had suffered. "Your story matters, Anton," I whispered into the darkness as I flipped through crumbling letters filled with bitterness and betrayal. Gradually, I learned of other prisoners who had suffered similarly, vigilantes of fate, their whispers scraping against the surface of my reality like the echoes of their trials against this merciless backdrop. There was Lena, whose fierce determination for justice was silenced by deceit, her screams muffled by the iron bars that confined her. I could hear her anguish, too sharply contrasted with Anton's resignation, and it fused into a maelstrom of sorrow that became overwhelming. In the depth of my obsession, I began encountering more than just voices. Shadows manifested as tangible forms flitting just beyond the corner of my vision. I could almost see the desperate eyes of the wronged prisoners, longing for someone to hear their cries, someone willing to remember them. It illuminated a reality I had not anticipated. The betrayal these souls suffered was not only personal, but a silent curse on the fabric of humanity itself. Here, in this prison, history morphed into a battlefield where trust could turn lethal in an instant. During one particularly sleepless night of piercing silence, I felt an avalanche of emotions crash over me as I absorbed Anton's story in its entirety. Memories flooded my mind. I could see him standing in the courtyard, sunlight bathing his face, joy flashing as he spoke with Klaus. My heart ached for a man betrayed by all he held dear. Suddenly, the room reverberated with angry whispers, emotions pouring forth like rivers of despair, laced with the specters of those all too familiar with betrayal. "You must listen, Jonas," a voice hissed, high-pitched with urgency. "We cannot be forgotten." In frantic determination, I captured their stories in the documentary I was crafting. Each retelling felt like a communion, reviving spirits lost to time, ensuring that their betrayals would not fade into obscurity. But as I prepared to conclude my work, an overwhelming dread amassed, a storm gathering within me, shrouded in the mourning cries of shades seeking justice. I knew I had to face Klaus. This entity, this embodiment of betrayal, lingered as a malevolent presence that surfaced in visions too vivid to ignore. I understood now he needed to confront his past deeds, as much as Anton craved peace. One final night, I returned to the execution chamber resolute, seeking resolution for both Anton and Klaus. The atmosphere throbbed with tension. I lit a candle and placed it upon a makeshift altar of broken stone, where Anton met his fate. "You're not alone," I murmured, the flickering flames casting restless shadows. "Your story is not forgotten." Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind extinguished my light, encasing the room in darkness. The whispers crescendoed into moans, and the air felt charged. "Klaus," I called into the void, feeling a shiver race down my spine. My heart thundered, and for a fleeting second, the spectral outline of Klaus sharpened a shadowy figure reflecting endless remorse. "What do you seek?" I forced out the words, each syllable tasting of fear and curiosity. "Forgiveness," the shadow spoke, its voice like a chilling breeze against my skin. "But I cannot forgive myself." The prison swelled with emotion then, a cacophony of sorrow and regret intertwining. I heard Anton's rage meld with Klaus's despair, and in that clamor, I realized these souls were tethered to each other, bound forever by a fate they could not escape. "Help him," Anton's voice called out, urgent but distant. "Help them both." I understood then the betrayal was cyclic, perpetuated by guilt, longing for absolution that would never come without confrontation. The truth, heavy and sharp, burst forth in May. I had a duty not just to document, but to act as a bridge between their worlds. As I raised my voice once more, I felt the atmosphere begin to shift. "Your stories deserve acknowledgement. You are more than your betrayals. Let your truths connect." Together, I urged, let this become a lesson learned, never to silence the bonds of trust we share. At that moment, the shadows began to entwine, forming a luminescent light that shimmered with hope, the flicker of realization and recognition. I knew that their stories would never balance the scales of betrayal, but perhaps their shared pain could forge an alliance stronger than the memories of anguish. As dawn kissed the bleak walls of Plötzensee, I emerged from the prison forever changed. I left with a weight heavier than any I had known, yet also lighter in the knowledge that I had borne witness to the echoes of betrayal that endured. The stories of Anton, Klaus, Lena, and so many others coalesced within me, each a thread in a tapestry woven from the fabric of human experience. They had glanced through the veil of history, past the shadows of betrayal they carried, to find a tiny flicker of hope in a world worn thin. I reflected on how betrayal leaves indelible marks, scars that seep into the soil, where silence once lay. It thrived still, whispering of regrets that haunt the landscape of our shared past. Those spirits remain tethered here, not just in grief, but in the plea for recognition, and I'd be their voice. Upon returning home, my work transformed a documentary now steeped in truth, with the weight of history behind it. More than just accounts, they became lessons of humanity. And as I faced the lens, I knew I was sharing not just their pain, but their hope. For it is through acknowledging our past and the suffering entwined within it that we can strive toward a better future. The vestiges of betrayal became intertwined with the possibility of healing, reminding us that we are never truly alone in our fate. The sun rose over the grisly monument, illuminating the prison walls where shadows once lurked. I felt an uncanny peace within me now, coupled with a nagging realization that ghosts reside everywhere, not only in places like Plötzensee, but within our hearts and the choices we make. Betrayal breeds in the hidden places of trust, and recognition can serve as balm for the deepest wounds. But as I turned away from the prison, a lingering thought clung to my mind. What other stories lay buried, unheard, waiting for someone to unearth the truth that binds us all? The cries of the past do not simply fade, they linger, waiting for those willing to plunge the depths of their darkness. I could only hope that one day, the spirit of trust might rise again to combat the ghosts of betrayal across time, across generations. As I stepped away, I prepared for what might come next. A deeper journey into this world of echoes that may yet reveal more stories yet untold. Plötzensee, now a story of redemption and mourning, awaited its next tellers. As we draw the curtains on our journey through the haunted corridors of Plotzensee Prison, it's clear that the stories shared tonight reveal haunting truths that reach far beyond the prison walls. We've traversed the emotional landscapes of love and loss with Laura, felt the weight of betrayal through Jonas's investigation, and grown intimately acquainted with the restive spirits of the past. Each tale whispers in the walls, the phantom of a haunted guard, and the enduring love that transcended time reveals the intertwined themes of connection, sacrifice, and enduring sorrow that define the human experience. Even in the most harrowing circumstances, in these echoes of history, love intertwines with betrayal, illuminating the profound emotional scars left behind. The heart-wrenching stories remind us that history is not merely a collection of dates and events. It breathes through those who lived it. The anguished souls who reside within these walls implore us to listen, to acknowledge their pain, and to honor their memories. As you step away from the shadows of Plotzensee, you may find yourself pondering, how many souls linger unseen, yearning for recognition? Could they be the spirits of those unjustly executed, still seeking peace? Or perhaps the guardians of forgotten stories that need to be unearthed? The haunting legacies we explored are an invitation to tune into the whispers of the past, a reminder that we are all bound by the threads of history, and that every place holds secrets waiting to be unveiled. We invite you to share your thoughts and experiences with us. Have you ever felt the icy caress of a ghostly presence? Or perhaps you've heard tales from the past that sent chills down your spine? Let us know in the comments below. And together, we can continue to unravel the stories that history has kept hidden. Thank you for accompanying us on this chilling expedition through Plotzensee Prison. We hope you enjoyed diving into this tapestry of ghostly encounters and historical exploration. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Ghost Stories of the Battles, for more captivating tales where the past and the supernatural intertwine. Until next time, keep the light of curiosity burning in your heart, for the world is filled with mysteries, just waiting to be discovered.